Hello and welcome to the last video this week and the last video of the MINPINS story time. I will be back next week with a different book. So we may as well just start. So when it was all over, Swan and little Billy flew higher and circled the lake for a last look. And suddenly the whole sky around them was filled with birds, and every bird had one or more MINPINS on its back. Little Billy recognised Don Minnie riding on a fine jay, and he was waving and cheering as he flew alongside them. It seemed that all the other MINPINS from the big tree had turned up as well to witness the great victory over the dreaded Gruncher. Every kind of bird was circling around little Billy and Swan, and the MINPINS on their backs were waving and clapping and shouting with joy. Little Billy waved back and laughed and thought how wonderful it all was. Then, led by Swan, all the birds and the MINPINS returned to the home tree. Back in the tree, there was a tremendous celebration for little Billy's victory over the dreaded Gruncher. MINPINS from all over the forest had flown in on their birds to cheer the young hero, and all the branches and twigs of the great tree were crowded with tiny people. When the cheers and the clapping had died down at last, Don Minnie stood up to make a speech. You can see a picture of Don Minnie there. "MINPINS of the forest!" he cried, raising his small voice so that it could be heard all over the tree. "The murderous Gruncher, who has gobbled up so many thousands of us MINPINS, has gone forever. The forest floor is safe at last for us to walk on. So now we can all go down to pick blackberries and winkleberries and puckleberries and muckleberries and twinkleberries and snozzberries to our heart's content. And our children can play among the wild flowers and the roots all day long." Don Minnie paused and turned his eyes upon little Billy, who was sitting on a branch not far away. "But ladies and gentlemen," he went on, "who is it we have to thank for this great blessing that has come upon us? Who is the saviour of the MINPINS?" Don Minnie paused again. The MINPINS in their thousands sat listening intently. "Our saviour," he cried out, "our hero, our wonder boy, is, as you already know, our human visitor, little Billy." Cheers and shouts of "Hooray for little Billy!" from the crowd. Don Minnie now turned and spoke directly to little Billy. "You, my boy, have done a wonderful thing for us, and in return we wish to do something for you. I've had a word with Swan, and he's agreed to become your personal private aeroplane for just as long as you remain small enough to fly on his back." More cheers and clapping and shouts of "Good old Swan, what a great idea!" "However," Don Minnie continued, still addressing little Billy, "you cannot go flying around all over the place on Swan's back in full daylight. Some human would be bound to see you, and then the secret would be out and you'd be forced to tell your people all about us. That must never happen. If it did, crowds of enormous humans would come clumping all over our beloved forest to look for MINPINS, and our quiet homeland would be ruined." "I'll never tell a soul!" little Billy cried out. "Even so," Don Minnie said, "we cannot risk you making daylight flights. But every night, after the light in your bedroom has been switched off, Swan will come to your window to see if you'd like a ride. Sometimes he will bring you back here to see us. Other times he will take you to visit places more wonderful than you could ever dream of. Would you like Swan to take you home now? I think we can risk just one more quick daylight flight." "Oh, gosh!" little Billy cried. "I'd clean forgotten about home. Mummy'll be in a panic. I must fly." Don Minnie gave a signal, and in 5 seconds Swan swooped down and landed on a tree. Little Billy climbed onto his back, and as the great Swan spread his wings and flew away, the whole forest, not just the tree they were in, but the whole forest from end to end, came alive with the cheering of 1,000,000 MINPINS. Swan landed on the lawn of little Billy's house, and little Billy jumped off his back and ran to the living room window. Very quietly he climbed in. The room was empty. "Little Billy," came his mother's voice from the kitchen, "what are you up to in there? You've been very quiet for a long time." "I'm being good, Mummy," Little Billy called back. I'm being very, very good. His mother came into the room with a pile of ironing in her arms. She looked at Little Billy. What have you been doing? She cried. Your clothes are absolutely filthy. I've been climbing trees, Little Billy said. I can't let you out my sight for 10 minutes, his mother said. Which tree was it? Just one of those trees outside, Little Billy said. If you're not careful, you'll fall down and break an arm, his mother said. Don't do it again. I won't, Little Billy said, smiling a little. I'll just fly up into the branches on silver wings. What rubbish you talk, his mother said as she walked out of the room with her ironing. From then on, Swan came every night to Little Billy's bedroom window. He came after Billy's mother and father had gone to sleep, and the whole house was quiet. But Little Billy was never asleep. He was always wide awake and eagerly waiting. And every night before Swan arrived, he saw to it that the curtains were drawn back and the window was open wide so that the great white bird could come gliding right into the room and land on the floor beside his bed. Then Little Billy would slip into his dressing gown and climb onto Swan's back, and off they would go. Oh, it was a wondrous secret life that Little Billy lived up there in the sky at night on Swan's back. They flew in a magical world of silence, swooping and gliding over the dark world below, where all the earthly people were fast asleep in their beds. You can see a nice picture of them in the clouds. Once Swan flew higher than ever before, and they came to an enormous billowing cloud that was shining in a pale golden light, and in the folds of this cloud Little Billy could make out creatures of some sort moving around. Who were they? He wanted so badly to ask Swan this question, but he couldn't speak a word of bird language. Swan seemed unwilling to fly very close to these creatures from another world, and this made it impossible for Little Billy to see them clearly. Another time Swan flew through the night for what seemed like hours and hours until they came at last to a gigantic opening in the earth's surface, a sort of huge gaping hole in the ground, and Swan glided slowly round and round above this massive crater and then right down into it. Deeper and deeper they went into the dark hole. Suddenly there was a brightness like a sunlight below them, and Little Billy could see a vast lake of water, gloriously blue, and on the surface of the lake thousands of swans were swimming slowly about. The pure white of the swans against the blue of the water was very beautiful. Oh, there's that hole that he flew into on the swan's back. Little Billy wondered whether this was a secret meeting place of all the swans of the world, and he wished he had been able to ask Swan this question as well. But sometimes mysteries are more intriguing than explanations, and the swans on the blue lake, like the creatures on the golden cloud, would remain a mystery forever in Little Billy's memory. About once a week, Swan would fly Little Billy back to the old tree in the forest to visit the MINPINS. On one of these visits, Don Minnie said to him, "You are growing up fast, Little Billy. I'm afraid that soon you'll be too heavy for Swan." "I know," Little Billy said. "I can't help it." "I'm afraid we don't have any bigger birds than Swan," Don Minnie said. "But when he can't carry you any longer, I do hope you'll come up here to visit us." I will," Little Billy cried. "I will always keep coming to see you. I will never forget you." "And listen," Don Minnie said, smiling. "Perhaps some of us might come down in a great secrecy to visit you." "Could you really do that?" Little Billy asked. "I think we might," Don Minnie said. "We could trickle silently down to your house in the dark and creep into your bedroom for a midnight feast." "But how would you get all the way up to my bedroom window?" Little Billy asked. "Have you forgotten our suction boots?" Don Minnie said. "We simply walk straight up on the wall of your house." "How lovely!" Little Billy cried. "Then we can take it in turns visiting each other." "Of course we can," Don Minnie said, and that is exactly what happened. No child has ever had such an exciting young life as little Billy, and no child has ever kept such a huge secret so faithfully. He never told a soul about the Minpins. I myself have been very careful not to tell you where they live, and I'm not about to tell you now. But if by some extraordinary chance you should one day wander into a forest and catch a glimpse of a Minpin, then hold your breath and thank your lucky stars, because up till now, so far as I know, no one, excepting little Billy, has ever seen one. Watch the birds as they fly above your heads, and who knows, you might well spy a tiny creature riding on the back of a swallow or a raven. Watch the robin, especially because it always flies low, and you might see a nervous young minpin perched on the feathers having its first flying lessons. And above all, watch with glittering eyes the whole world around you, because the greatest secrets are always hidden in the most unlikely places. Those who don't believe in magic will never find it. And that is the end of the Minpins. Thank you so much for watching for the last week. I will be doing more Storytime videos next week, and if there are any other videos that you want me to do, please let me know, because I love making videos for you. I am looking forward to seeing your faces whenever I can. If you're doing work at home, feel free to send it in. Get your parents to email it to me. If you're doing work at school, Miss Hurren tells me how hard you're working, so I know that you'll be producing some really good work. I will see you next week.